Hey everybody, and welcome to another amazing, exciting, and enthusiastic episode of Finding Peaks. Yours truly, Chris Burns, President and Founder, Chief Executive Officers here at Peaks Recovery Centers. I am so grateful today to be joined by John Narine, President, Founder, Recovery First Leaders. Before we get into Recovery First Leaders, which is very, very catchy, we're going to be talking about a multitude of things. He's also an author of Leading Workplace Addiction. So grateful to have Dr. John Narine here today. Dr. John, how are you doing today, sir?
Pretty good, thank you.
Awesome, man. Thanks for hanging out with me today. We've had a great time getting to know each other. We just got done touring Trailhead up at Peaks Recovery Centers, checking in with none other than Chef Sandra. Got the lowdown on the culture and the culinary setting there at Peaks. So grateful to have you here today, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your hospitality and showing me around. And it was great to see your staff and how well they love seeing you.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool.
And how they remind me when they haven't seen me.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like, "Where have you been?"
Yes.
I missed you. Yeah, I love being seen there. And it's one of those environments that we were talking about earlier where, you know, it was kind of forged in fire a decade ago, kind of behind this Theodore Roosevelt quote that says, "Nobody cares what you know until they know that you care." And so I'm so grateful when we can take people into the facility and you get to kind of experience that energy firsthand. And I know it's near and dear to your heart with what you do and what you've set up with you and your team. And so can't wait to get into some of that. So grateful to have you on today. As we sit here today, maybe you can allow the viewers a little bit of insight into kind of your personal and professional story. Like, how did we get here? How did you become to have so much passion, not only for the professional recovery workforce situation that you have going on, but your personal side as well?
Sure, yeah. You know, I didn't get here by choice. It wasn't my plan. I'll put it that way. Yeah, it was not. But when it was put before me, it was something I just felt like I was called to do, and today I can't imagine my life without. You know, I personal recovery myself, suffered from addiction, first to alcohol, then it was to other drugs, and finally my last vice, meth, which really took me downhill really fast. And when I was sober, I was a really high functioning employee. Like, I was the guy getting noticed and turning things ahead of time and doing more than what you're paying me to do. And that, you know, was just my pattern when I was sober. But when I wasn't, it was the complete opposite. I wouldn't show up. I didn't turn things in when I said I was going to, and I just became really unreliable. Cost companies a lot of money. You know, I hurt teams that I was supposed to manage and be there for. So when I was thinking about how do I ask for help, this was the issue. At the time, I didn't really have a family I had a family, but I didn't know how to go to them and tell them what was going on.
It'd be scary.
I have friends, but I didn't know how to go to them or say anything. I was kind of, you know, dipping my toes into recovery programs, 12-step, non-12-step, but didn't use it for what they suggested using it for.
Yeah.
So work became my family. Impressing my boss, making my coworkers happy, that was my family. So to think about how do I actually tell them and disappoint them and become the black sheep and who knows what may happen, that was the struggle. How do I ask for help and keep my job? So because of that, I just chose to stay quiet.
Yeah.
And I ended up losing both.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that could be like, I mean, you just bring up such a good topic with respect to just not feeling safe to explain and introduce who and what I am and where I'm at. In the workplace, I saw it so often in my early career. You know, house managers would come in. It's like, you know, it was the best job I ever had when I got here, making $10 an hour. And my sobriety, my job is dependent on my sobriety. I mean, this is a protected situation. These are people struggling with mental health issues with no outlets or reprieve or connections to go to in the workplace. I hate that you had to walk through it, but I love that you saw it clearly as an opportunity to say, hey, I think there's something here that we can insert and just do a bit differently for these folks to feel safe and have an opportunity. Because I've been telling people for years, like, my recovery people are the most productive people I've ever met. They're the most extraordinary human beings on planet Earth when supported correctly, seen, valued, heard. which RFL kind of takes a pretty big aim at in the professional community.
Yep.
Maybe you can talk a little bit with the viewers about RFL, Recovery Friendly Leaders. I love the name.
Yeah.
Love the name.
Yeah. So there's a movement nationwide called Recovery Friendly Workplace. It started a couple years ago in New Hampshire, and the government has noticed it, wants many states to do this initiative. And Colorado, I'm very grateful for this, has legislation now that puts this Recovery Friendly Workplace initiative in this state, where workplaces can get policies. They can figure out how to work with someone to have the culture and the resources that protect and support employees in recovery and keep the workplace safe. So Recovery Friendly Leader, it was a play off that name because we work in collaboration with them. In fact, our logo, a circle and triangle, a lot of debate went to how do we show this servant leader, recovery friendly leader, and those are the symbols that
It does kind of look like a buttoned up, like
it's the person, right? It's the
Yeah.
leader, the upside down triangle for the servant leader, and then just the recovery symbol of the triangle and the circle. So it all just fits well together. But what we do is, now that a workplace says that they can support employees, right? We go and we show the managers exactly what that looks like. I worked in a place like that where we had policies. We had mental health days that we could take, no reason needed. We had FMLA and an EAP. We'd have everything, people first culture. But when I came forward and asked for help, no one knew what to do because no one had training.
Yeah.
So figuring out along the way, we were all doing that together. And it might have looked differently. I can bet on my life it would have looked differently if there was some training involved on both of us, both of us.
Yeah, it can be, some of the most resourced HR departments. I can be up on campus, and some of the biggest fears for professionals up on campus is like, did you guys fill out my FMLA? Am I going to have my job in it? I mean, these are primal issues.
Right.
We're trying to settle into grief week. I'm trying to get some work done here, and I don't know if I'm going to be supported. And to your point, in HR departments that are far more resourced than most that we come across in behavioral health or any other sort of profession. And we just miss the opportunity for some of those connected tissue conversations, trainings, and opportunities in those professional settings.
Yeah.
Yeah. What has been some of the like really interesting on, like, when you go into facilities and they contract with you and you go through the workbook, what are you seeing some of the biggest kind of like aha moments for people within that professional setting? Like, I can't believe I missed that, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I just did a training maybe 2 months ago, and it was it was our pilot training.
Okay.
It's an introduction to substance use, addiction, and recovery in the workplace. And it was breaking things down in a very digestible chunks and level. So most of the people in there were in HR, and they were not in the recovery field, which is beautiful because that's the people we're trying to reach, right? The people that don't know this. And substance use, right? I start with, what is a substance? So we're breaking out the dictionary, and it's a thing made up of, it's a chemical makeup of a thing, basically. So this book, this straw, right? There's a chemical makeup to it. So now when we bring that idea into the workplace, we talk about substance use, right? And we're talking about what drugs and alcohol are. That can include Tylenol. But breaking it even further, we're looking at problematic substance use here. So what is the substances that are causing problems in the workplace, and what does that look like? Then all of a sudden, it's no longer, oh, they have substance use disorder, we don't know what that's like, it's unrelatable. This is, okay, this could show up as a one-time incident, or it can progress into a compulsive, addictive nature. I used to go out with plenty of managers who did not have any disorder. We all called off the following day, right? But they don't have disorder, right? But could they benefit from maybe a conversation? When you don't show up, this is how it affects the workplace, right? When you don't, when you come in late or you're hungover, this is how it affects the workplace. The point is to increase relatability. And I had an HR professional reach out to me and said, thank you. Now I understand a little more of how this actually looks like and what this means.
Yeah, you're almost introducing them to their position within the story. Everybody engages with substance, guys, right? Some do it more problematic than others. Some have more intensity. Seasons of life inform that. But let's be clear. they can leave that first training, that first pilot training going, I think I might have struggled with substance a time or two.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And the compassion and empathy and connectedness, you know?
Because we talk about stigma all the time. It's a word that there's so many trainings on and there's so many techniques, but for me, it's if I'm going to destigmatize something and try to bring in understanding, relatability is one of the fastest way for me to get there, right? If I can relate, I can understand much better and empathize much better. So that is kind of the intention behind how we go about this. Everything's about collaboration, how we work together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love the education first thing. Because we were talking a little bit earlier about when we were getting zoned for peaks recovery and all kind of the rigmarole we had to go through and the intensity in the community. And you were like, why? Wouldn't they want this resource here? And I was like, yeah. But I think sometimes when people don't understand and they're not educated, they don't understand something, they judge it. And a lot of times that world view can be a little bit disconnected from the reality. And so I love that we're starting with education. That is such a huge thing, because in that education piece, I think there's so much connection. And when you get that connection, in my experience, you get the influence. When you have the influence, we're recovery-friendly leaders.
Yes.
I know you've touched on it a little bit, but what are some of like the bigger gaps you've seen within, HR departments, policies and procedures? Is it just absent entirely with respect to insight into mental health and recovery in the HR department and FMLA? Or so what are some of the biggest gaps you're seeing that we can begin to fill through resources like recovery-friendly leaders and recovery-friendly workplaces?
Sure. I was speaking to the Construction Association a few weeks ago, and the people in this particular meeting all are advocates for mental health in their workplaces. I mean, in the industry, there's tons of suicide and overdose, and it's pretty intense right now. So the one struggle they had is, how do we get our leadership open to this? They love the word mental health, right? But as soon as we get to substance use or recovery, then it's like, don't talk about it.
Right.
And so that's where we start, right? We start with where they're at. So in any industry, that's what we're trying to do. When it comes to the healthcare field, this one baffles me a lot, specifically in the peer recovery space, because your bosses are people with lived experience. And when I took a poll and asked, would you feel comfortable telling your boss if you were struggling that day? I heard a lot of no's, and I was floored, because who better to understand, but I need to be seen as capable. I might be pulled off, right? If I have a license, that might get, it's the fear of that might get a violation, or I might lose that. And nurses, doctors, they all fall under the same fear of speaking out. And what we talk about in our training is, I didn't learn to be in recovery by keeping it silent with the expectation to stay sober.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's what you're saying.
Yeah, right.
Without saying it. That's not what I learned. So if I can release a thought or a craving by speaking it so that I can be capable and able, well, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
What unfair predicament is this field placing me in? And it's all about health at the same time. So each industry is having their specific nuances, and I'm learning more along the way, as I talk to more companies and get out there.
That's so interesting. You bring up such a unique point, is to say that, like, even in our substance use treatment programs, in our behavioral health networks, in our healthcare settings where it's top of mind, the second we start mentioning substance use, people are like, oh, I think I have to have 2 years to do this job, or I have to, if you're a client care aide, you're sharing experience, strength, and hope. And a lot of time that experience, strength, and hope feels very much waged on, is my sobriety intact? And is it safe to be honest? Because we know that honesty is the key. And so I love that you're talking about this, and I'll even speak to it in early peaks, is where I can see, we've been around 10 and a half years now. The first half of peaks, I would imagine that people didn't feel safe coming forward and saying, hey, I had a bad Wednesday. I'm hopeful that we're moving in that direction, because we treat at peaks, we treat suffering all in the same thing, and we're all here together, and we get professionals from Idaho and post office workers from New York and young women from Nebraska and all points in between. And I feel very privileged to do that, but I love what you're doing here, because you're providing what I can see very clearly is just a missing link in the chain.
Yeah. The other two big things that I've seen along the way is people think, I'm hearing this perception, again, without them saying it, but for example, we're going to lose our federal funding if we do this.
Yeah.
So that, to me, tells me you think you're hiring and employing people actively using and going to enable that or accept that as the behavior or the conduct in the workplace. And that's not what this is. So that's another challenge, is changing that perception. Another one is, we don't do a lot of Narcan, but I've heard we can't have Narcan because we can't condone people using. Right. So it's just, there's a lot of perspectives that have to be switched on what this work is and the tools that we're trying to give you. A lot of the stuff is already in. I've talked to you about this, right? I believe the skills are there. We're going to help reveal them, right? And how to apply them towards people in recovery. Yeah.
I love that. Just kind of reframing for people and reorienting people. It's a bit of like cognitive behavioral therapy, but it is so insightful when you can educate people, get them to see clearly their spot in the story. I go back to my personal recovery all the time. It's like when they placed my story within theirs, I was like, let's go.
Right.
Because I could feel that. And it was connected, and there was something about it that made me feel a part of, and we could walk with. And so I don't think, even though it feels like a heavy lift in corporate America, I don't think we're too far away. I think people are feeling this distress. People are feeling this disconnection. Employer groups are feeling some of their strongest leaders and employees, for whatever reason, here today and gone tomorrow without really an answer as to why. And I think your company and the way that you guys are moving into community really speaks to that in a very clear way.
Yeah.
So it's really, really awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd say like after the pandemic is when I think more companies are starting to be more open to this. Alcohol was an essential, and COVID revealed a lot to us about how people cope, whether they had a disorder or not.
Yeah.
Right? And it's become a need. Since the pandemic.
Yeah, it really is. I love that you bring that up too, because I remember sitting with people in the pandemic being like, oh, this is amazing. We're all in this place together in this recovery environment. There's no cars in the road. As bad as the pandemic was, and we lost more people than we should have, I think it really provided, it kind of lifted the bottom up for a lot of us and provided an opportunity for us to see each other clearly in an environment that was pretty disconnected. And so I always thought to myself how lucky we were to be in recovery and in recovery community when we were walking through that. I mean, how cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I got sober in the pandemic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, I didn't have the experience prior the way I do now, to the connectedness of being in person and being able to give somebody a hug. Because I love giving hugs.
Yeah.
I was hugging your staff.
Yeah.
I love it. And, that really tore a lot of people up, because that physical connection is just so special. So it's funny because at the workplace, I used to live in Florida. So the way we used to say hello at work was handshake and a kiss on the cheek.
Oh, cool.
So when I moved to Colorado, I said hello the way I knew how.
Yeah.
HR had to talk to me after that incident.
It's like, hey man, this is a safe workplace, but
I didn't know, right?
I love it.
Yeah, but just that physical touch and the intimacy that comes with that for connection is really important, I think.
Yeah, I forgot how much I missed that in the pandemic. And I was actually at a conference in California. Where were we? Beverly Hills or something or other.
Okay.
And it was an emergence conference with TJ Woodward. And TJ Woodward put on the conference, and it was really, really cool. And one of the really, really unique and dynamic things about it were that nobody could read off of slides. We all had to be together, connected in this place. And they did a ton of psychodrama within the conference, which is really atypical within like a treatment conference. But it was all about community. It was all about connection. It was all about intimacy. It was all about relationship. And quite frankly, it was the coolest conference I've ever been to.
Yeah.
I mean, just really, really cool. Just talk about authenticity.
Yeah.
And that was something when we first checked in, and then even when we checked in before the show, it was like, that's something that strikes me about you as a president and the leader of this organization is this authentic piece that you bring forward that you really want to just share with people in a really, really cool way. And I love today how you've been so honest and open and clear with the viewers, because I think sometimes people misread addiction and misread alcoholism, and they say, there's no way this guy could have struggled with that, right? And I just love that people like you, professionals like yourself, and humans in recovery can come into a place like this and share openly with the world that, yeah, I am that, and I also walked through this. Mm-hmm. And it's fortified and forged in this environment through recovery leaders, and I want to share that with the world. I think it's a really beautiful thing, man. And I am honored to be able to sit here with you today and share this with the viewers. So before we go, I want to talk about, I got my own copy today, you know, and really looking forward to getting into this, but maybe we can talk a little bit about why you wrote this book, what people can expect, and then what that is over there.
Sure. Before I get into that, I want to talk about the relationship piece that you just mentioned, if I may.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a huge piece to our training, right? How managers can have that relationship with the employee, any employee, right? Just like you would any. You get to know their personality, their characteristics. You form that bond with them. We want everyone to have that camaraderie and team work, team building like, environment where they feel like they belong.
Yeah.
The research that went behind that book goes into basic needs of a human and basic needs of someone in recovery and an employee. And they all align. And one of those basic needs is the need to belong, right? So I hear it all the time, the opposite of addiction is connection, right? So when we fulfill that one need in the workplace, and that might look like soliciting someone's opinion on a project or inviting them to a meeting personally, right? Just that extra step, because we get into the how, right? We get into the how to really make that employee feel that they're valued for who they are, that we intentionally want to work with you despite the fact that you're in recovery or not, whatever your status is, and that we love you, right?
Yeah.
We care about you and your well-being.
Yeah.
So that book really it started out as my dissertation in school. See, when I wasn't sober, I wasn't passing this one class I needed to actually get to the dissertation phase, and I got sober, and all of a sudden I passed.
Yeah.
How about that?
With flying colors, I'm sure.
Who would have thought, right?
It was a great paper.
Yeah. So when it came time to study a problem, the only thing that really spoke to me was, how do other managers do this? How do they help someone like me and keep their business operational? And luckily, during the pandemic, I was able to find people who had this experience of helping an employee, who gave them the same suggestions that would offer to me. Same exact things, but it was the how. See, when EAP was offered to me, I said thank you and I hung up, because I don't know what you're going to share with my HR or my manager. I'm afraid to ask you because of what you may think about me asking. I'm not going to look it up. Whatever, right? But they were taking the extra step to, hey, listen, when you go there, everything's confidential. We won't know what you talked about with your counselor. We just want you to get better, right? And employees were doing the suggestions,
right.
and they were forming this trust with their manager. They were willing to follow their guidance. They were willing to talk about small issues because they became bigger problems, and that's the relationship that was starting to get built, right? And those are the relationships we want to see in more workplaces.
Yeah.
Because we just want to make sure the opportunity to recover always exists through the efforts of the leaders, right? To make sure that opportunity is there, that the barriers are broken down, that accessibility is equitable amongst everyone. Yeah, we want the employee to feel comfortable taking advantage of that.
Yeah, that's a huge deal.
Yeah. I mean, there's a difference between a policy that says I'm allowed to leave work on time, but when I do that, the one who stays later gets the promotion.
Of course.
Right? So, yeah, the policy may say something, but how do I show you it's okay? That's what we try to bring in.
How do you inform that? And you brought up such a beautiful point, and I think sometimes in business we get into this like, well, we don't want a family, but you talk about something much different. It's more of a community feel and being a part of something and feeling important within that ecosystem, back to our point, seen, valued, and heard. I can speak for myself. when I've been in professional settings, when I'm seen, valued, and heard, and I can speak to when I'm not. And the differences are insane. So I love what you're doing to fortify this opportunity, because I'm sure you've done the cost-benefit analysis with onboarding employees and discharging and EAPs and HRs and all this stuff. And I'm sure it's a very cost-effective opportunity for people to engage with. And one of which, like from an employee handbook or like a package perspective, if I'm reading through that, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Because it says you care. And I think that's what people that are struggling with mental health and substance use issues need to know, is they walk through a really difficult issue that it tends to be generally mired in a tremendous amount of shame. So thank you for being a conduit to help pull people and walk with people out of that. I had one question that I always like to ask young entrepreneurs like yourself that are just getting ready to set this world on fire. Zoom out or zoom in, zoom out, zoom in. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, recovery first leaders, if you could have a professional dream come true, and one of them, what would it be and why?
Professional dream 5 years from now. You know, I've had a few people from different states that want to do this training, and I have reluctantly said no. It was hard. I'm going to tell you why. I have made no income so far, right? And it wasn't about that, because it's about doing this work. Finally, we got a grant, right? And they want to license this. They want to bring it to their state, you know, bring it to the association. I got to see this work here first. I got to work out the kinks, you know, before I go and be like, hey, go use this stuff. So I would love to see, particularly the East Coast where I'm from, right? I'm sure this is everywhere, but from my experience, certain places and the culture and what that's like, I'm just a number. As long as I can produce that number, I'm great, right? And the one day I don't, bye, your history. So to bring this into those types of workplaces across states that have that culture, you know, I would love to see that happen. And hopefully the opportunity still remains 5 years from now.
That is so cool. I tend to believe, I bring people on this show, you know, amazing professionals, but even better humans. I tend to believe you will sell yourself short with that proposition, because recovery-friendly leaders are here, recovery-friendly workplaces are alive and well. It's top of mind. It's a hot topic. I think you're moving into a very, very important part, not just with your personal recovery, but professional side of things that is really, really needed right now. Everybody knows there's a disconnect. They just don't know where and why. And I think recovery first leaders, leading workplace addiction, a lot of the energy that you're creating is going to speak to that really, really clearly. Before we end here, how can the viewers find you? How do we get a hold of this information? How do we get it in our treatment programs? How do we get it in our workplaces, website, all of that good stuff?
Sure. Our website is www.recoveryfriendlyleader.org. There's information about how we got started, our history, the research that actually went into this. If you're more interested in the book or wanting to support organization, there's a donate button there. In fact, Colorado Gives Day is coming up, and I'm doing a giveaway of a free book. Anyone who donates $250 or more gets entered into a drawing for that book. So I'm pretty excited about that and what's to come. And I love the work that you're doing too. Treatment centers are important. I've been to my fair share. And, you know, FMLA helps with that, but you talked about community. So I experienced that for 30, 60, 90 days. My longest term was 90 residential, right? So I have 3 months of this ongoing community experience. And when I get out of there, if I still have my job or I get a new one, right? And that job supports me, then that means that translates and keeps going into the workplace as well. See, I don't support you by sending you to treatment because you're cured and can come back to toxicity. That's not how this works. So that is the work we're doing too. So the important thing I want you to know, right, or any treatment center out there, is when your clients come out and they go back to work, hopefully they work somewhere that understands what just happened and what needs to happen moving forward, especially at a place where they're spending a lot, if not majority of their waking hours, where everything they just learned is gonna get tested now at work.
Yep.
Right? So that support, especially from their manager, someone who can give that strong guidance, that's what we hope to be able to provide.
Yeah. I love it. And when we first met, I'll say it again as I said it then a few weeks ago, I know Recovery Friendly Workplace has been around for a little while, but this is the first time in Colorado in my 10 years of being here that I've heard anything close to this. I cannot wait for this to take off like a wildfire. Recovery Friendly leaders, Dr. John Narine, thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
All right, viewers, until next time, peace.